This is the British Columbia Football Conference. Where are they now feature? And we're going way, way back with Owen Dawkins, former running back from the unfortunately defunct Abbotsford Airforce. Owen, how you doing? Thanks for doing this.
Good, doing great. I'm ecstatic and excited to be talking to you.
Good. So for those of you for those that didn't play in the same era or were around when Owen was, tell us when you played, position, fill us in.
Well, I played from, I believe it was 1991 to about 94, I believe. I played 3 years with the Abbotsford Airforce, and I played tailback, actually, for 3 years there. And that was, I think we were constantly ranked top three in the province, and we never made it to nationals, but we were still a force to be reckoned with, hence the Abbotsford Airforce.
You were a tailback. Remembering back, you were a big running back before guys were big. Just exactly were you? What was your playing weight?
And I've been thinking about it. I think it was probably 220. I mean, that was probably light for me, but it was about 220. I was competitive in wrestling at the same time. So I believe, it was probably 220, maybe in the summer a little bit higher because it's off season, but we'll say 220.
Do you remember running guys over? Because I remember watching those games, and you were a beast.
You know what? I look back and I think it was sometimes a lot more fun to run guys over than try to run around them, because I mean, our team always seemed to run me right up the middle. So I just got used to running into people and then running them over or going into a pile and coming out with the ball. That was my thing.
How did you end up in, were you a BC guy, or how did you end up playing for the Air Force?
Actually, no, I graduated out of Oakville, Ontario, out of White Oaks High School. And then I went to BC to wrestle for SFU and wrestle for Burnaby Mountain Wrestling Club. And a friend of mine, I believe he met me, he was in the mall, we were talking, and he told me about the Abbotsford Airforce. And I said, hey, why not? And he gave me a ride to practice 3 times a week.
How did you end up with the Air Force versus, say, I think back then there was the Bulldogs and the Surrey Rams. How did you end up in Abbotsford?
I just didn't know about any other ones. That was my buddy of mine. He was out in Abbotsford, and he told me about it. And I said, all right, let me give it a try. In hindsight, if I had known there had been Surrey, the Bulldogs, Vancouver, which was a bus ride, it might have been easier, but that's where I ended up.
Looking back, let's talk about your teammates. Anybody that stands out? Who do you keep in touch with?
My number one guy would be Richard Vincent. We were roommates all the way through. We visited each other's family. He was definitely a close friend of mine. Tony Keene, Carmen Colcott, Kelly Lockbaum, Duncan Mahoney, who ended up playing in the CFL. These are guys that I definitely have fond memories with playing with.
What about any of your opponents stand out that you liked battling with?
Jermaine Haley, and it was Akbal Singh. He was my rival running back I believe he ended up playing from Surrey, then he went to UBC, and that was a couple of the guys I like to compete against.
You were one of the few running backs that physically could at least stand up to Haley. He was a beast, wasn't he?
Well, he was huge, and I mean, it wasn't fun running into him, and I think because of that we became fairly good friends. But he was massive, and even his brother, who played in the league too, they were what I call, they were man-child. They were bigger than most of our old linemen.
So where are you today? What's Owen Dawkins' life doing?
Well, right now I'm currently the men's and women's head coach at the University of Alberta wrestling team. We're one of the top ranked teams in the country, and I've been there for 10 years.
We talked about this the other day when we were setting this up, and I asked you the question, and it was interesting, your perception on it. Athletes specializing in sports. You as a football guy coming from a real team sport to more now of an individual sport, where do you stand on an athlete specializing versus playing everything?
You know what? And I think there's room for both. Like I said before, I mean, I think the biggest problem, unless everyone is on the same even playing field. That's the only way it actually makes sense. So if everyone isn't specializing, then it's useful. But if you have athletes who are specializing and other athletes who aren't, it creates a huge uneven playing field. And then the athletes who aren't specializing, they'll quit, because the athletes who are specializing at a certain age will be so far ahead of them. Being a young athlete, you don't realize it all. We all catch up eventually. So you quit before you actually get to the point where your true skills come out.
You've got a young family. I think you said a boy and a girl?
Yes, I have a boy and girl. My son is just turning 5. It was my birthday present, 2014. We have the same birthday, so that's exciting. And then my daughter, she's turning 2 this summer as well.
So back to the question. So the whole specialization question, what do you do? Like, let's say your son, let's say he's a football player and a wrestler. How do you make that decision as far as a recommendation? What would you tell a parent?
You know what? For me, my first thing, gymnastics. And I think if the kids start off in gymnastics, you know what? That's the foundation for most sport, if not all sports. The falling, being explosive. I think all of those things, gymnastics, and then, I like a team sport and an individual sport. I think you need both. I think if your athlete just does one sport, it's such a small number of athletes who make it to the next level. If you don't have an option of something else to fall on in the future, it becomes really hard. Because I look back, and it's probably the same for you. When we were in school, when we did physical education, we were taught how to dribble a basketball, how to jump, how to shoot, how to do everything. Now, you're not learned that anymore. So, I think the specialization has taken over, whereas schools have basically dismantled physical education programs. So, I don't know. I think we're heading in the wrong direction, but we'll see where it goes.
Fair enough. Back to football, just we wrap up. Do you follow the junior game anymore? Have you lost touch?
You know what? Not as much. I follow the university, because that's where I'm at. I'm University of Alberta. I think now after this interview, I think I'm going to find myself being a little bit more involved with junior football. For years, the Abbotsford Airforce, we've talked about doing a little bit of a reunion, and I think that's something I'm going to try to push, to get in contact with a bunch of those guys for a weekend and see if we can get that going.
Well, we're going to have this out on our social media pages. So consider this your first commercial for the first annual or semi-annual Abbotsford Airforce alumni.
Awesome. Thank you very much.
What do we call it? We'll come up with the name for the Over the Hill gang for the Air Force.
We're not over the hill. We're on the hill.
Awesome. Listen, we appreciate you doing this very much, Owen. And like I said, we really appreciate you talking to us.
All right. Thank you very much.